I was catching up with a writer friend in my local diner recently when something clicked into place for me while I was sitting across from her. I remember she was halfway through this big mug of coffee, and I was trying to savor my chocolate chip cookie. And I remember how the food from the other diners around us was so delicious smelling and warm and cozy. And we hadn't seen each other since the holidays. So we were telling each other about our respective experiences over the holidays, and the conversation naturally turned towards family and family dynamics. And eventually, we started talking about how much my own family dynamics have changed since I published my memoir. Now, my memoir tells the story of my childhood, so it obviously involves other family members. And I was telling her, just talking to her and describing the range of the reactions that I've received from various family members, ranging from everything from distance to retaliation to continued silence. And we were sort of talking into the psychology of all that and what it is that, you know, leads to these various reactions in various people. And what she said really stopped me because she reminded me of this quote by Matt Kahn, a spiritual teacher, I would say, who said that people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. And I've heard that before, but in that moment, it was when I really felt it and it really coalesced together what I've been trying to do because it explains something that I feel that so many writers struggle to even name. If you've ever felt the call to tell your story, you've probably also felt this. What will it do to my relationships? How will people react? Will they understand me? Will I lose people? Yeah. And sometimes that fear is so hard to articulate that you don't even realize that that's what's stopping you from telling your story. But in that moment, I was reminded of that truth, which is that you cannot control or predict, nor are you responsible for how deeply someone else can meet you, which is what they are doing essentially when they are reading or hearing your story. So you can do the work, you can write with forgiveness and have all the empathy and compassion, and you can show up with care as you write with honesty and compassion. But the response of others will always be shaped by their own level of self awareness, their own healing, and their own capacity. And when I was writing my own memoir, Never Make a Sound, I had already done a significant amount of work, of inner work around facing the shame I felt around my own abusive past. And I had learned to see myself and cultivated empathy for what I had lived through. And most importantly, I had given myself permission to tell the truth. And this is the part that matters the most, which is that the person that you need to understand, have empathy for, accept, and have compassion for as you write your story with honesty is yourself, first and foremost. And remember that your memoir does not exist to indict anyone. It exists to illuminate your experience, your perspective, your transformation. And in doing so and telling the truth, it may well change relationships, but that does not mean that you've done something wrong. The truth reveals what is already there. So if I think about that quote, that the full quote is, despite how open, peaceful, and loving you attempt to be, people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. This is the heart of clarity. And it says it all because when you understand that, what shifts is that you can then stop trying to control the outcome. You stop abandoning yourself to keep some sense of peace, and you just commit to anchor into telling the truth. So, this revelation of hearing this quote was that this is one of the core principles that I share inside of Before the Aftermath, my masterclass, which I held a couple of weeks ago, because I realized that, the writing part is only a part of the journey of telling your story, of writing a memoir. What comes afterwards, the conversations, the reactions, the shifts, both internal and external, that's what so many people feel unprepared for. And I realized that you don't have to navigate that part alone. And that's why I created Before the Aftermath. And inside this conversation, I walk through what it actually looks like to tell the truth and to stay grounded in yourself, even as the things around you shift. And I share it all from lived experience by sharing my own personal story and experience with this in writing my memoir and putting it out into the world. So if there's a story that you feel called to tell, but you're thinking about the impact that it might have on others, I want to offer you this. I've put a link below where you can get the replay of Before the Aftermath so that you can begin to have some support for the aftermath of telling your story. And as always, I love to hear your thoughts on this topic. So let me know in the comments or DM me, what do you fear most about the aftermath of telling your story?